There's a river flowing from the throne of God. Drink from the water right now. Oh, there's a river flowing from the throne of God. Drink from the water right now. It's a river of healing.
Good morning. I'm Jason Guinasso, and I'm the attorney supporting the Yes on One campaign in Lyon County. That's the campaign where the citizens of Lyon County are going to get an opportunity to vote on whether to end legalized prostitution in their county or not. And today you're going to learn about why it is so vital that we demand change and why we should put a stop to this form of sexual exploitation. In today's show, we're going to address a number of questions, including, is prostitution a choice? We're also going to address the question, is prostitution a job? And then we're going to take some time to debunk some common myths about brothels and legal prostitution. And we're going to hear from people whose minds were changed once they learned the facts about the legalized system and its relationship to the illegal sex trade in our state, as well as to a number of other crimes and issues that our state faces as it pertains to violence against women. We're going to take some time to listen to the testimonial of people who work directly with women in prostitution in our legal brothels and learn about who is exactly affected by this legal system. Now, having grown up in Nevada, I certainly understand the old Nevada narrative that prostitution is a part of the Nevada way. And this sentiment, I understand, is really almost a part of the DNA of what many believe it means to be a Nevadan. Indeed, when I was in high school, I remember young men reporting that their dads had taken them to the brothels as a sort of rite of passage from youth to adult manhood. But now I'm a father, and I have a son and I have a daughter. And I work very, very hard, as I'm sure many of you do, to be the best parent I can be. Now, while I may not be perfect, I certainly have clarity on a few aspects of what it means to be a dad. And I certainly can't accept for even 1 minute that teaching my son that his manhood is somehow tied to a sexual conquest is acceptable. I can't imagine teaching him that women are a commodity to be bought and to be sold. I think to teach him such things would undermine his dignity and the dignity of the young women that he interacts with on a day-to-day basis. Indeed, the dignity of the woman that he may one day call wife. Now, with regard to my daughter, I have a great deal of hopes and a great deal of desires for her. She is an incredibly smart and hardworking, kind, and she's beautiful in every way. And like many dads, I have great desire to see her succeed in this life and to be happy and joyful in all of her endeavors. However, let's take a minute, and I want you to listen to this conversation. And imagine your daughter coming to you and presenting you with this entreaty.
Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a prostitute. No, Dad, no, I want to be a prostitute. I mean, like, I could even start now, because, like, I don't know, like, the average age in the U.S. is 14 for prostitution, so I could start really soon. Well, it'd be really just such a cool job. My friend, Nancy, she says that on a slow night, she makes like $300 to $400 a night, and on a good night, she makes like $700 to $800, which, like, can you imagine having that much money after like one night? It's amazing. Dad, it would really, really be such a great opportunity. The girls get to wear such great clothes, and all of the boys, like, pay attention to them more and seem to really like it. And, like, half of the girls that go into this business get to have movies made of them, so I could even be a movie star. And, I mean, it is legal in here in Nevada, Dad. And so I think it's just really something that I want to do. Well, please, Dad, I know it can be dangerous, but I've looked at the books, I've looked at the websites, and I'll be one of the 14% who doesn't report being abused by my clients. I'm in control, I'm responsible, and I know that I'm capable of that. And I will be one of the 5% who say that they don't use drugs. Once again, it's my body, I'm in control. Well, you don't have to get so worked up about my health, Dad. I'll get tested once a week, and I'll have access to health care if I get a disease. Besides, everyone wears protection. Well, I won't be like one of the 81% of the girls who say they want to escape. I'll really enjoy this business. It's honestly my dream job. With all that money, all that fame, how could I not want this? It's amazing. It'd be such a dream come true, and it's my life.
Pretty startling, isn't it? None of us would want to have that conversation with our daughter. The truth is, really, that no little girl dreams of being a prostitute. You know, no mother gives birth to a daughter with the dream that she will one day sell herself to fulfill some 45-year-old man's sexual desires and fantasies. It is not a dream, and it's really not a choice.
Most of us today have heard stories of the millions of women and children forced into prostitution through human trafficking. We're aware and we're grieved. But what about those women in prostitution who weren't trafficked? Did those women willfully choose prostitution? And are they as empowered, independent, and sexually liberated as many would have us believe? What we've come to see through years of research and thousands of conversations with prostituted women across the world is a very different picture of prostitution. And the truth of this picture is that prostitution can be more accurately described as the choice of those with the fewest choices. See, nearly without fail, women enter prostitution from a position of vulnerability. Many women, quote unquote, choose prostitution as underage children, some as young as 12. This so-called choice is often heavily influenced by prior sexual abuse. It is influenced by the unrelenting messages from the media, pop culture, and society that communicate that a woman's primary value is her sex appeal. Many prostituted women and children come from families broken by poverty, addiction, and mental illness. Many are homeless, orphaned, refugees, or suffer some form of social disadvantage. One formerly prostituted woman wrote about the sentiment of choosing prostitution. She said, "When I think about my choices, they were simply these: have men on and inside you, or continue to suffer homelessness and hunger. Take your pick, make your choice." Prostitution preys upon the most vulnerable in our society, coercing individuals through life circumstances to trade sex for the hope of a better life, or even to simply survive. If this is the truth of prostitution, then prostitution is not a choice. If we truly care about the dignity, safety, and empowerment of women and children, then we must fight for a world without prostitution. We must fight for a world where our most vulnerable are offered real choices. And we're asking you to choose this fight.
Now, as you heard in the video, prostitution is simply not a choice. It's not a choice. Prostitution is primarily the result of a lack of choice among the most marginalized, against the most vulnerable and the most defenseless people in the world. Most women in prostitution come from poverty and are pulled into the industry by a desperate need for money.
What is prostitution? Many people say it's the world's oldest profession, that it's a job, just like any other job. But when you look at the real lives and real experiences of those in prostitution, it's clear that it's unlike any other job. 98% of those bought in prostitution are women. 99% of the buyers are men. These numbers reveal that at its very core, prostitution is a system of gender inequality. It's a system where women exist to fulfill the sexual desires of men. She is seen as a product to be bought, used, and discarded. Within this system of inequality, women in prostitution routinely endure violent, exploitative, and dehumanizing acts at the hands of sex buyers and pimps that are incomparable to any other profession. Our society has created laws against workplace sexual harassment, but in prostitution, the job is sexual harassment. One survivor said, "As a prostitute, you do not get to frame the boundaries of your sexual experience." The largest study ever conducted on prostitution revealed that 63% of women in prostitution experience rape, and 71% experienced multiple forms of physical violence. Yet another study revealed the types of violence women in prostitution experience, which included being kicked, punched, robbed, strangled, kidnapped, burnt with cigarettes, slashed with razor blades, and urinated on. As a result, the majority of women studied in prostitution met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder on the same level as combat victims and torture victims. The mortality rate of women in prostitution is 200 times higher than the general population of women. These are not job hazards. These are statistical probabilities that women in prostitution will be sexually and physically assaulted and will suffer from severe mental and emotional trauma. This is not a job. It is a violation of human rights. It is a system of violence, exploitation, and inequality against women, and it must be stopped. Join the movement to end the business of exploitation.
Most women engaged in prostitution are suffering from poverty and are pulled into the industry by their desperate need for money. In addition to this precondition of poverty, a prior history of childhood physical or sexual abuse is commonplace among prostituted women. It is extremely rare, and hear me when I say this, it is extremely rare to find a person in prostitution who has not suffered from one form of abuse or another before her time in the sex industry. And I can tell you this, no one chooses to be abused. Now, how many of you dads or mothers woke up this morning hoping to have the kind of conversation with your daughter that you just heard in that segment? The fact that the idea of that conversation repulses you, as it does me, should underscore in your heart and in your mind that there is an inherent problem with legal prostitution. Human beings should not be bought and sold, ever, for any reason. This is a basic tenet of human rights as expressed in our U.S. Constitution and in international law. But for reasons that appear to be unconscionable to me and so many out in Lyon County and any other reasonable person who has ever raised a daughter, Nevada permits and protects the practice. The counties that allow prostitution are de facto pimps in the business of buying and selling women. Maybe that's why in 2016 it was reported that Nevada is one of the 10 worst states for human trafficking, with hundreds of calls to the national hotline each year. In fact, in Nevada, just last spring, a study came out from Creighton University that clearly showed that Nevada has a higher incidence of sex trafficking than any other state in the union, and it's not even close.
Pro-prostitution says that it's the oldest profession, that it always has been and therefore it always should be. We say it's the oldest oppression. We say that it always has been, but we say that it no longer should be. Pro-prostitution says that child prostitution is harmful and bad, but adult is okay and it's empowering. Abolition says that child prostitution is bad, but we know that many, if not most, women in prostitution started out as children. So women in prostitution are children who were lucky enough to live long enough to become women in prostitution. They're the same people at different points in their life. Pro-prostitution says that it's a choice. We say it's the choice of people who have the fewest choices or no choices at all.
Maybe protecting this so-called Nevada institution is why Nevada is the 7th highest incidence of rape reported to law enforcement and ranks 2nd across the nation in the rate of women murdered by men. I'm now serving the people of Lyon County as they work to uproot brothels that have irreparably damaged thousands of our sons and our daughters. This effort is especially appropriate in Lyon County because, as reported by the FBI, a woman is 1,600% more likely to be raped in Lyon County, a county with legal brothels, than in Carson County, a county with no legal brothels, even though the populations of both of these localities are almost identical. In fact, statewide, the reported sexual assault rate is 26 times higher in the rural counties with brothels than in the rural counties without brothels. Now, brothel owners claim that brothels are supposed to reduce these type of crimes, but the facts do not support their self-serving narrative. Brothels are no elixir for preventing sex trafficking and crimes against women and children. Brothels are a poison to the communities that host them and serve as a catalyst to illegal activity, not as a deterrent. So I hope that you will stand with the people in Lyon County, as I have, as a father, and because I care for the girls who are trapped in this industry. I want to be a part of a new Nevada narrative that honors women for who they are and the endless potential that they have to live, to work, and to lead in our great state. Not the old Nevada narrative that tolerates allowing women to be bought and sold as an object or a commodity. My hope is that this effort in Lyon County will succeed in changing the misguided notions of what it really means to be a Nevadan. I hope that this effort in Lyon County will be the catalyst for our state waking up to the fact that it is no longer acceptable to allow women to be bought and sold as a commodity for the sexual gratification of men. You also hear a myth that somehow brothels are good for the economy. Now go with me on a house hunting adventure. Just you and I. We're looking for a house, and we are looking to buy a house in Dayton. And you have a choice between two identical houses. One house is within 1 square mile of one of the brothels in Dayton, and one house is outside of that 1 square mile. Both houses identical in every way. Both houses have the same number of rooms. Both houses are the same age. Both houses have the same amenities. Let me ask you this question. All things being equal, would you rather have the house within 1 mile of the legal brothel or outside of the 1 mile radius of a legal brothel? Well, obviously, most of us, if not all of us, would prefer to have our house outside of that 1 mile radius. And it's that fact that underpins what we've learned about residential homes for the 12-month period ending in August 2018. Let me read this to you. A study done by realtors recently, looking at a 12-month period from August of 2017 to August 2018, shows that homes within a 1 mile radius of Mountain House brothels sell for, get this, 27% less than those within a 2 to 5 mile radius of the Mountain House brothels. Let that sink in for a second. Brothel proponents are telling you that their brothels are good for the economy, but we know that where brothels exist in Lyon County, that property values are diminished by as much as 27%. Now, there are a lot of arguments that those who are defending the legal brothel system will make, and one of those arguments happens to be that Lyon County somehow depends on legalized prostitution for important revenue. But that is a myth. Less than 1% of Lyon County's entire general fund is supported by brothel revenues. You might hear the myth that goes something like this: legalized brothels will reduce sex trafficking. It's simply not true. Nevada is the leading state in the country for the number of incidences of illegal sex trafficking. Legalized prostitution appears to have done really nothing to stem the victimization of women within the illegal sex trade. Adjusted for population, Nevada's illegal commercial sex market is by far the largest of any state. In an average month in our state, get this, at least 5,016 individuals are sold for sex illegally. On a per capita basis, that means in Nevada, the number of illegally prostituted persons in our state is 63% higher than the next closest state, New York, and more than twice that of what happens in our neighboring state, California. And data from recent studies shows that prostituted persons in the illegal trade around licensed brothels are as likely to have been trafficked as those in areas without legal brothels. So, where is the deterrent effect that these brothel advocates speak about? It simply doesn't exist. It's another myth to promote a self-serving narrative that benefits a very few people at the expense of victimizing hundreds, if not thousands, of women who are trafficked through our state each and every year. Some might even tell you that legalized prostitution reduces the incidence of violence against women. However, the research just doesn't support that claim. The research shows that prostitution is an institutionalized form of violence against women. One study of 154 women in prostitution found that 65 to 75% of these women had been raped, 70 to 95% had been physically assaulted, and 68% met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, in the same range as treatment-seeking combat veterans and victims of state-organized torture. So legalized prostitution is not a deterrent toward violence against women. In fact, it is the systematic acceptance of violence against women. During this season, there are going to be a lot of representations made about legal brothels, and one of those representations you're going to hear is that legal brothels are highly regulated and have been licensed and policed in this state for over 50 years. Now, while it may be true that in counties with less than 700,000 people that these brothels have existed in those counties, it isn't true to say that they are highly regulated. In fact, most of the sheriffs that work in these counties will tell you that their offices simply do not have the resources to regulate brothels in a way that will ensure that A, women are not being trafficked through brothels, B, that drug use, abuse, and sales are not occurring in the brothels. They'll tell you that they don't have enough resources to appropriate protection is being used during each sex act in the brothels, or to prevent violence and sexual abuse in the brothels. And they'll tell you that they don't have enough resources to enforce the terms of the independent contractor agreements that these women enter into when they are brought onto the brothels. And there's nothing really that law enforcement or even health officials can do to ensure that each seller and buyer are free from sexually transmitted diseases. In fact, one of the most overlooked facts in this industry is while the women in the brothels are tested from time to time, men who come to purchase sex are never tested. Let that sink in for a second. And then if a woman who tests positive in these brothels for a sexually transmitted disease can't get health care to effectively mitigate against that sexually transmitted disease, you know what happens to her? She gets fired. She's thrown away. But the men who bring those sexually transmitted diseases into the brothels, there's no consequence for them. They continue to infect the women who they purchase over and over and over again. That's not high regulation. That's not protecting women. That's not safe access to sex. That's recklessness, and that's abuse, and it should be stopped.
You know, years ago when I started out in this field, I didn't understand this stuff. I had never thought, more than 5 minutes about prostitution and if it was exploitation. I would have thought I was being so, progressive if I used a term like sex work. I would have thought I was being sophisticated and intellectual. But having, spent years learning and talking to people and meeting people who've been exploited, looking into the eyes of women prostituting, seeing victims in West Africa, going through Tijuana and looking at the red light district. Once you have those experiences, it's pretty hard to come away from it and say, wow, this is just some rosy occupation.
Donate today at yes on lc1.com and help us fight back against the pimps and sex traffickers that coerce and exploit the most vulnerable people in our society. That's yes on lc1.com to support the fight against sex trafficking and prostitution in Nevada.
Thank you for watching Demonstrations of Faith, a ministry outreach of Faith Alive Christian Center in Reno, Nevada. If you don't have a home church, we invite you to come and connect with us. We have ministry for the entire family on Sundays at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. and Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Our Connect Youth Ministry meets on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. Childcare is available for all services. Our location is 120 Hubbard Way, half block east of the Peppermill in Reno. You can find us online at faithalive.net or by searching for Faith Alive at all social media outlets. Thanks for watching, and join us next week for Demonstrations of Faith.
And it's flowing to me.